Hey there, this is Ross Izzard, and this is the Backcountry Fly Fishing Podcast, where we talk about fly fishing in more interesting places. So I'm going to warn you in advance on today's episode that I'm a little tired. I went on a very, very big hike yesterday to a lake that I had not planned on visiting this year, but because my plans changed and I got blown off of another lake a couple weeks ago and was a little frustrated, I thought I'd go ahead and knock it out. It was an awesome day, amazing, beautiful place, incredible fish, but it was a lot of hiking. And then I came back, and because I have 4 children, I got very little sleep. So you will have to forgive me if I've got a little bit of brain fog going on. Today, I did want to go ahead and record and get another podcast out there. So we're going to do that, whether or not I'm at 100%. So here we are. And really, if you're not going to be at 100%, there's no better reason to not be at 100% than the fact that you had an awesome backcountry fly fishing day. So last time we talked about the stuff that I carry for day trips. It was the day trip edition. Covered kind of all the gear that I have with me on a typical day trip. So when I'm hiking, whether it's to a lake or I'm fishing my way up a stream or really anything that I happen to be doing in the backcountry, that episode walks you through the equipment that I have with me. But one of the other factors that a lot of people don't think about is what you wear to do stuff like this. For anybody who's been involved in outdoor activities for any length of time, you know that it's kind of a crazy game of dress up. There's gear out there that ranges from being very fashionable and attractive, and you kind of want to look a certain way when you're out there, to stuff that is really rugged and functional, but kind of doesn't look the best. And then there's stuff made for people who are kind of outdoorsy and that they might go walk around in the woods for an hour on a Sunday. And then there's stuff made for people who are doing serious mountaineering or alpine climbs. There's just a lot of stuff out there. And really figuring out what you should be wearing to be cool and to be comfortable and to just be able to have a good time out there can be a pretty challenging proposition for a lot of people. It can also be a pretty expensive proposition for a lot of people. You know, when I first started, I didn't necessarily know all of these answers. And so I spent a lot of days wearing stuff that really wasn't the right stuff to be wearing for one reason or another. And as a result, I was cold or I was hot or I got eaten alive by bugs or I was cold in the water. My feet were frozen or whatever. It just wasn't a great time because I wasn't wearing the right stuff. I had to spend a bunch of money, run through kind of several outdoor wardrobes, figuring out what worked and what didn't. And I have now settled on a system that I think is pretty universally good for being out in the backcountry for long days of chasing fish. This is the summer and fall edition. In my head, I sort of group winter and spring together just because of those really cold temperatures, particularly in the early spring. And I kind of group summer and fall together because you have that kind of blend of warmer weather on the back half of summer and the beginning of fall. And I think they kind of go well together. They're pretty close to the same system, maybe a couple of modifications here or there, but they're close enough that we can talk about summer and fall in one episode. And then we can hit, winter and spring in a future episode when it's a little more relevant to you. But given that it is currently August 31st, I thought it might make sense to talk about that summer and fall season and transition in terms of what I wear when I'm out there. So here we go. We're going to jump into it. I'm going to start at the head, and then I'm going to work my way down to the shoulders, knees, and toes, because that's the way the song goes, and why not? I'll walk you through all this stuff. It's pretty minimalistic. I don't think there's going to be a lot here that's going to blow your mind, but it might give you some ideas. So first things first, you got to wear a hat. This is starting at the top of your head. You need to be wearing a hat, in part because you look weird when you fish without a hat. I hate to be the guy that tells you that, but people that fish without a hat, I don't know why you would do that. It doesn't really matter what kind of hat it is. I wear just a standard baseball cap. I've got a couple tips and tricks, interestingly, about that I'll share with you at some other point on a tips episode. But you need some type of hat. It can be like one of those boonie hats with the wide brim all the way around that keeps the sun off you. It can be a baseball cap like what I wear. But you need to have something on your head. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, that brim will really help keep the sun out of your face and cut down on the glare when you're fishing. It really does help a lot. It's kind of like putting down a visor in a car when you have the sun in your face. It makes a big, big difference to visibility, and it will help you see fish better. It will help you fish better. It will also save your eyes. Probably shouldn't be a huge surprise if you are exposing your eyes to extremely intense sunlight for hundreds of hours a year. It will eventually start to, leave a mark and cause some damage. Giving yourself a little bit of extra shade with a hat with a brim is the right way to do it. You're going to want a hat with UPF protection. You can decide how much. I think mine is 50, but you do want sun protection on your head. So I'm a bald guy, which means I don't have any hair up there to screen my head, which means that I'm at particular risk of getting sunburned or having sun damage on my head. So I've always worn a hat, but it's actually interesting. I went to the dermatologist earlier this year to get a spot looked at on the top of my head that was just kind of weird. It was like a red spot. And she asked me, well, are you out in the sun a lot? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, I'm in the sun all the time, right? I mean, that's kind of my thing. I love being outside, but I'm always wearing a hat. I always have a baseball cap on. I mean, literally 99.9% of the time. I don't know how I could possibly have sun damage there. And she told me that your hat may or may not actually provide UPF protection. And by that, it means blocking UV rays from getting to your skin. Now, I had assumed that a hat would just do that. I kind of thought that was the point of the hat. But apparently that's not true. So just like thinner clothing, some percentage of those UV rays can penetrate the hat, and then it can hit your scalp, even with the hat on, and start causing sun damage. In my case, this spot was what they call a precancerous something or other. I don't know. We'll call it a sunspot because I don't know the medical term. But had I left it alone, it could have developed into skin cancer on the top of my head. And that is despite wearing a hat every single time I'm out there. So when you buy your hat, make sure that you get a UPF protecting hat. So they will say UPF on them. They'll tell you a rating. It could be 30. It might be 35. It might be 50. And that just tells you how much of the UV rays the hat blocks. But you do want to take the time to shop for and find a hat that provides UV protection. You might have to order it. They're not super common, shockingly, but you're going to want to have that with you. It's going to help you a lot. One bonus thing about hats is, in addition to keeping the sun out of your eyes and protecting you from the sun on the top of your head, they will also keep bugs off of your head. Mosquitoes really love to bite your head. So do horseflies and pretty much everything else that bites anywhere near a body of water. They love to eat your head. And it really doesn't feel good when you have mosquito bites on your head. So having a hat on will save you from having them find that one little juicy spot in the middle of your bald head, if you're me, or even if you have hair, finding that one spot where they can fly in and bite you, and then you're walking around scratching your head like you have some kind of terrible scalp condition for several days afterward. The hat will save you from that. So do make sure that you have a baseball cap with you. Now, I always carry a beanie with me in addition to the baseball cap. The beanie is just a knitted cap that fits down over your head. I tend to prefer the ones that sort of roll up at the bottom rather than the ones that are just a single piece beanie. I think they just work a little better. You can adjust where they sit on your head so they can cover your ears fully if you're cold, or you can roll them up a little extra to give yourself some extra air on the ears if you're hot. And they also just think that they tend to fit better and to stretch better. You might get cold. If you're camping in the morning, your head could get cold. You're going to be happy that you have a beanie. You might want to wear it while you're sleeping if you're sleeping outside, just to keep your head warm if it's sticking out of the sleeping bag. And, you never know, and especially at these high alpine lakes, you're 12,000 feet or higher, that weather can go from pleasant to really, really cold very, very quickly. Most of you probably know, if you've spent any time outside, that you lose the vast majority of your body heat through your head. And so if your head is cold and it's not covered and your ears are cold, you are probably going to be cold. Carrying a beanie, it weighs next to nothing. You can pack it in the very bottom of your pack all summer, but the few times during the summer you need it, you're going to be happy that you have it. And then in the fall, when you probably will need it on a regular basis, it's just already in your pack and you can grab it. Please note, you can wear the beanie over your baseball cap. In addition to making you look like a super cool fly fishing bro, or a super cool fly fishing girl, whichever you happen to be, The beanie, if you get the right kind and it fits you right, can actually just slide right down over your baseball cap. So you don't have to sacrifice that visor. You can wear your favorite baseball cap. You can just put that beanie right over the top when you're cold. And if you get hot, you just take it right off and you're good. So you only really ever have to keep that beanie in your bag. You don't have to be out there switching hats if you get uncomfortable. But carry a baseball cap, carry a beanie. Both of those things are top of the list when it comes to what I wear. Okay, on the torso side. So this took me quite a while. I've spent time in t-shirts. I've spent time in sort of long sleeve cotton shirts. I spent time in athletic wear like Under Armour. And I have finally settled on dedicated fishing sun shirts. They're kind of thin material, thin and sort of slick material. They provide UPF protection. It's usually UPF 50, same reason that you want obviously sun protection for your head. You're going to want that for your arms and your body. And they usually have hoods. So that hood is important. You can pull that up over the top of your baseball cap, in addition to providing a little bit of additional protection from the bugs. It will also protect the back of your neck from the sun. And it kind of provides a little bit of insulation if you do happen to get cold. So if there's like a real stiff wind at one of these lakes, or if there's a storm coming in, putting that hood up, even though it's kind of thin, can really provide some warmth. So you're going to want to wear sun shirts. A lot of these are dedicated fishing sun shirts. I have several different brands. Some of them are Under Armour. I think they're great. Those actually have these really cool kind of vented sections in the armpits and down the sides that really help you bleed heat when you're hiking, because you can obviously start to get pretty warm when you're huffing and puffing up one of these mountains. I have some Patagonia sun shirts that are really, really good as well. I have one from Rep Your Water, which I really like. It's a little thicker of a material, so I tend to wear that in the shoulder seasons. But you do want to get yourself a long sleeve sun shirt. It will protect your skin much better. Skin protective clothing is much, much more efficient at protecting you from the sun than sunscreen is. You don't have to reapply it. And it's a beautiful thing. You wake up in the morning, you slap on your shirt, and you're pretty much good for sun protection for the day. You got to put some sunscreen on your neck and your face and your ears and maybe the back of your hands. By the way, you should put sunscreen on the back of your hands. If you don't, they are going to get weathered and you're going to wind up looking like a brown paper bag by the time you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s. Just put a little bit of sunscreen on the back of your hands. You'll be happy that you did. But when you have that long sleeve sun shirt, that's pretty much it. It's like your neck, your face, your head, your hands, and that's it. Everything else is fully covered. And that is a huge convenience. They're comfortable. They're fairly cool. A lot of the nice ones breathe pretty nicely. And they're just a good piece of equipment. So I have 5 or 6 of those that I rotate through. They're pretty smelly, obviously, when you get done with whatever you happen to be doing for the day. So it's nice to have some spares. You can throw that one in the laundry. And even if you don't get it back for, a few days or a week, you've got extra ones laying around. And they are very, very helpful. Do keep in mind that you want to be cautious about what type of material they're made out of. So like I mentioned, I have one in particular from Rep Your Water that is kind of thicker stuff. Same UPF protection, same concept, but the fabric is just heavier than some of those lighter ones that I have from Under Armour or Patagonia or Cool or any of those brands. And it's not super nice to hike in the heat with. Not really nice to stand out in full-blown summer sun with, to be honest with you. So pay attention to that, and you may want to get a few. You might want to get one that's nice and thin for those warmer months and when you're moving around. You might want to get a thicker one for those kind of shoulder seasons in the fall or the spring when you might want that little bit of extra insulation, but you don't want to be wearing something super duper heavy. Pay attention to that because fabric density and fabric thickness really matters. And they also tend to come with sort of different venting properties. So the heavier ones obviously aren't typically vented because they're made for colder weather when you probably don't want to be losing a bunch of heat. Summer ones are going to have some type of venting in the arms or the armpits that help you bleed heat because when you're hot, you're trying to get rid of it. You'd like to cool down. So sun shirt, do make sure that you have those. You'll be glad you did. Okay, over the sun shirt, I am usually wearing, and by usually I mean 99% of the time, especially when I'm starting a hike early in the morning, I am wearing either a pile hoodie, which is a sort of fleece style jacket, but it's made with pile, so it's kind of that lumpy, soft, almost carpety material. Or I'm wearing sort of a tech hoodie. So the pile hoodie that I use is actually, I think it's a Patagonia, and I think it's called a retro pile. It's a pullover. It's like a 3/4 zip or a quarter zip pullover. You pull it down, you zip it up as far as you want. You can put that zipper down lower if you start getting hot to let a little bit of extra heat bleed out of your chest, or you can zip it up all the way if you are happening to get cold. It's got a hood on it, so you can pull that up over your ears if you're getting cold while you're out there. But it's pretty good. Partially at just insulating you, I find that it breathes really well. Surprisingly, I can wear that thing in pretty warm weather on a pretty regular basis without getting super duper uncomfortable. It really does a pretty good job of regulating your body temperature. And then it's got that hood. So really good piece of equipment. When I'm not using it, I don't want to pack it down into my backpacks. My backpack's usually pretty full, as you could probably tell from last week's episode. And so I just tie that thing to the top handle of my backpack, and it just kind of sits on my shoulders, So I get hot, I take it off, I tie it up there. It just sits there until I need it again. But it weighs next to nothing. It's very, very comfortable. And it's a really good way to stay warm in the early mornings when you're hiking without going crazy and getting too hot and sweating, which if anybody out there hikes, you know that getting hot and sweaty, ironically, is a very fast way to get cold, because when you sweat, that sweat is designed to evaporate from your skin, and it will make you cold. So you get sweaty under those jackets, you take it off later, and suddenly you're not hot anymore, you're freezing cold, and it gets very, very tough to regulate your body temperature. So I love that retro pile. It's great. It's with me pretty much all the time. I do occasionally wear a tech hoodie, and by that I mean sort of an outdoor specific hoodie. The one that I recently got, it's actually called The One hoodie from a company called Cool, spelled Kuhl. And it is this sort of crazy ultralight zip up hoodie / jacket thing that's got a very nice kind of fleece lining inside. The outside is this very thin, breathable material that is also water resistant. They say it's waterproof, but I am not sure I'd buy that. I don't think I'd wear it in the rain. But it is very breathable. It's thick enough to be warm when you're cold, and it is thin enough and breathable enough to help you sort of bleed off heat when you're warm-ish but not hot, right? So that's like when you're hiking and it's high 40s or low 50s. It's cool enough that you probably don't want to be doing it in a t-shirt, but it's also warm enough that you don't want to be doing it in like a puffy jacket. And that Cool hoodie does really well. It's super thin, so if it's really cold outside or for whatever reason, I'm probably going to layer it, right? So I'll have my sun shirt at the bottom of it. I will put the Cool The One hoodie over that, or whatever else I happen to be wearing. Maybe it's like a Patagonia pullover or whatever it happens to be. And then I'll put that pile hoodie that I mentioned earlier over the top of that. So I've got several layers of clothes on me. And when I get uncomfortably warm, I strip one off and I keep hiking. And then if I get warm again, I strip the next one off and tie that to my backpack and keep hiking. But those layers really give you the option to regulate your core temperature in a way that is really helpful. And it's nice to have when you're in the backcountry. I should mention that when you're wading, especially in cold water, so this would be kind of getting on in the fall when that water is a lot colder than it is in the summertime, I have noticed that I typically, because I'm wet wading, I'm usually not wearing waders until, let's say, October. That water can get your legs pretty cold and your thighs pretty cold. There's a lot of blood moving through your legs, and obviously as you get cold, that starts to affect your core temperature. Being able to run a little bit hot up top with the jackets can help you a lot. So if you're cold down low, but you're wearing a layer or two extra, even if it's warm and sunny. I sometimes wear these things when it's like 80 degrees outside, but my legs are submerged in cold water. My torso is obviously out in the open air. And that balance between being probably slightly overdressed and a little warm up top and then underdressed and kind of cold down low leads to a pretty great balance of temperature regulation and being pretty comfortable for the entire day. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. Do bring layers, especially if you expect cold weather. You don't need to bring like a real big heavy coat. They're hard to carry. They're annoying. They're really not great for hiking, to be honest with you. But if you bring just a couple of layers, one real light one and then one sort of slightly heavier one that could fit over the top of it, you're going to be able to handle the vast majority of what you run into. You hit a blizzard somehow, and you didn't look at the forecast, I guess you might be a little uncomfortable. But even then, you got that rain jacket in your pack that we talked about before. You can always pull that thing out, throw it over the top of all the layers as an extra shell, and really, you're going to be pretty warm. I've fished through some really, really cold winter days. I mean, we're talking like 10 degrees or colder, and nothing but a rain jacket over the top of one or two of these layers, and been really pretty warm for the entire day. So you can get away with 99.9% of your fishing using these layers. One more thing on the torso that you need to think about. You need to wear a back brace, or at least I wear a back brace. I know that you are probably in your 20s or in your 30s, super rugged, very good looking and handsome, and just way too tough and way too young and way too athletic to need a back brace, but you probably need a back brace. I started wearing one of these because I noticed that my posture when I fish is pretty bad. I'm often like reaching across a current seam with the rod. Sometimes I'm standing there like kind of leaning forward, running a streamer or whatever. But your posture is pretty bad. And I don't think it's just me, because when I see other people fishing, they're kind of doing like the hunchback routine out there. And it's not great for you. And if you do that for a real long period of time, your lower back's going to start to hurt. Even if you're young and otherwise healthy, it will start to bother you. Same thing with hiking. You hike all day, you're probably going to start getting a little bit of lower back pain. Now, you should have good posture. Of course, that's something that you want to work on. But the truth is, you're tired. You may not, and really will not, have good posture all the time. And that back brace just makes a world of difference. So you strap it around your middle. You tighten it up. It's got straps on it that you can use to tighten around yourself so it's nice and snug. And it just holds your lower back in place. It doesn't let it bend the wrong way. It doesn't keep it bulging. And it just makes you a lot more comfortable. So get yourself a back brace. You can order one on Amazon. I think I have like some cheap Chinese one. I don't actually even remember what the name of the brand is. But you can get yourself one pretty inexpensively. And I just carry it with me. I won't fish without that thing. Like, there are days where if I get there and I forgot it, I might seriously rethink what I'm doing for the day, because it makes that big of a difference. And you can wear it all day. I wore mine yesterday on this big long hike I probably had it on for close to 12 hours. And it's a little uncomfortable. It gets a little sweaty. It feels pretty good when you take that thing off. But you can wear it all day, and it makes a huge difference. It was a game changer for me. I think it'll probably be a game changer for you. But it is a required and necessary part of my equipment that I pretty much always have on whenever I'm fishing. Okay, moving down to the legs. And this is where things get a little interesting. So in those colder months, let's say we're talking about spring and winter fly fishing, I'm probably going to be wearing waders, or even late fall as it kind of tips into winter season. I'll be wearing waders, right? And that's a whole different conversation. We'll have a full podcast about various types of waders, but that's what I'll be wearing when it's real, real cold. When those water temperatures are starting to push low 40s, air temps are getting colder, I'm going to throw on some pretty high chest waders, and that's a whole different ballgame. In the summer, though, and really even in most of the fall, I like to wet wade. I like to be in the water. I like to feel the water. I like to be part of the water. And I know that sounds, sort of hippy dippy or whatever, but I like it. It's part of the experience for me. And I wet wade whenever I can, in part because it's hot and I don't want to be super hot. I see guys wearing waders when it's like 95 degrees outside at lower elevations, and I honestly don't know how they do that. But also just because I think it's a cool experience to just be in the water doing my thing. And so I am pretty much always wet wading, and I have been through everything you can think of when it comes to what I'm wearing on my lower body for wet wading. For a little while, I just wore like a bathing suit or some board shorts, and I would just throw those on. It worked okay, I guess. It had the benefit of being quick dry and obviously made to get wet, and that's fine. But it wasn't exactly the best way to do it. In part because your legs are bare and exposed, and in part because they're just not really made for that. Most bathing suits are not super tough. They're not super rugged. They usually don't have belt loops to put like a serious belt on. You just like tie a set of drawstrings that may or may not be tight enough. They can get pretty uncomfortable over time. If you're a guy, they have like these kind of weird pseudo underwear built into them that interfere with your ability to wear actual underwear. And they can just be kind of annoying. So that was really not the right way to do that. Same thing for shorts. I have tried various kinds of shorts. There's the quick dry shorts. There are the hiking shorts. There are regular shorts. And the truth is, I just don't think any of them really work. They don't provide any protection for your knees when you're climbing up over rocks, or if you happen to scrape your leg against something or you fall and slam your leg into a rock. They don't provide any protection at all. Depending on where you're fishing, they don't do much for you as far as keeping like leeches off you in the water. Or if you're stomping through a bunch of grass or bushes, keeping ticks off of you, which particularly in the Western U.S., you really don't want those ticks on you. It's a good way to, number one, be really grossed out because they're super gross little creatures. But number two, they carry pretty nasty diseases that you can contract that are, in addition to being very unpleasant, potentially life-altering. These are bad news things. We're talking like Rocky Mountain tick fever or Lyme disease. They're rare. I don't want to give you the impression this happens a lot. It doesn't, but it does happen. And it's really just better not to have those things biting you, right? Same thing for like spiders. You could walk through a bush full of spiders and one could bite you. You could get eaten alive by mosquitoes on your legs. They do get beat up on whatever you happen to be walking through. Shorts are just really not the right thing to wear. So what I do wear is long hiking pants. I don't think you need to spend $200 on dedicated, air quotes, wading pants. You can, and I'm sure they work great. I haven't tried them. But I buy just kind of standard tech hiking pants. I've had a pair of the cool, Kuhl, Renegades that I've worn for a long time. They are extremely durable. They're very thin. They're pretty cool. They're pretty breathable, but they're extremely durable. I mean, those things they don't ever tear. I've fallen off of mountain bikes with them. I have like scraped them against sharp rocks and jagged twigs. I think I've probably run a knife across them a few times while I'm cutting something. They are super tough. They never tear. They never fray. They're very, very comfortable. The downside of those is that they don't dry super duper quickly. And that doesn't necessarily matter. Like sometimes it's so hot outside that it's kind of nice to be a little bit wet and you might not be concerned about how quickly your pants dry. But there are other times where it's good to dry off quickly. And to be honest with you, in the outdoors, just given how quickly weather can change, especially in the backcountry or at high elevations, being able to dry off quickly is a plus. Like it's hard for me to think of a time when that would be a minus. So even though you don't necessarily need it, it's probably a good thing to have. And so I have increasingly moved toward kind of the same kind of pants. They're obviously long pants. They fit comfortably. They're durable enough to handle bushwhacking and scraping them on rocks and whatever else, but they dry pretty quickly. And the ones I've been using most recently for that are the Wrangler ATG pants. I think I bought these on Amazon for like maybe $30 a pair. It's actually crazy how cheap they are compared to a lot of the hiking pants out there. And they're really pretty good. They are comfortable. They are cool enough to sort of keep me from overheating when I'm hiking. They're also warm enough to protect me from that cold wind when it really starts howling in those mountains and it's going to shoot up your shorts and you go, ooh, it's not very nice. And they dry super duper quickly. You can get those things soaking wet. They're probably going to be dry inside of an hour, maybe even faster than that, depending on how warm it is. And that's a huge bonus, right? Like if I'm fishing and then I'm going to go camp, I don't want to go to bed in wet pants. And same thing, like even if I'm just walking back to the truck, I don't want to probably drive back to civilization with wet pants. It's nice for them to dry off quickly. So those Wrangler ATG pants have been really good. And I think have become my all-around favorite pick for what I'm wearing on my legs during the summer and the fall when I am wet wading. One other thing, as I mentioned earlier, you need belt loops. Okay, so the drawstring pants or the elastic waisted pants or any other kind of pants, they're not going to work for you. They're going to be uncomfortable. You are going to be pulling them up all the time. You're going to have the plumber's crack thing going on because they're going to be sagging. And in addition to that, when your pants sag, they start to constrict your butt and your hips and all of those muscles that you need to wade and to hike. And it doesn't feel very good. It really restricts your ability to be athletic out there and do the stuff that you need to do. It's kind of like trying to do a bicep curl with like a blood pressure cuff on your arm. Your muscle just isn't made to work when it's being constricted. And if you don't have pants that sit up on your waist, so above your hip bones, and they're starting to sag down, it is going to interfere with those muscles. It's going to interfere with your ability to hike. And it's just generally going to be pretty uncomfortable. On top of the fact that if you don't have a belt, you could lose them, right? Like if you fall in the water and the current catches you, or if you bend the wrong way, or they get hung up on a branch or whatever, you can become like that cartoon character who loses his pants and goes running off trying to hide your you-know-whats. You don't want your pants to fall off. You need an actual pair of pants with actual belt loops that you can use for an actual belt. Doesn't matter what kind of belt you wear. I've been through a bunch of these. I've worn like the webbing belts that are specifically for the outdoors. I've worn just standard leather belts. I've worn the kind of clip belts that have that plastic clip in the front. I've worn stretchy belts. I've worn rigid belts. I tried all of them. I'm not totally sure that it really matters, but I will say this. I think you want a belt with an actual buckle. I don't know if the material matters, but I think that the buckle matters. If you get one that has one of those kind of, I don't know what they're called, but they're like a sliding roll buckle where the fabric goes in one side and it goes down over like a rolling pin in the buckle, and then you tighten it. So they're like they allow you to tighten more. I cannot ever get those things to stay put. Over time, it starts to work its way out. They get looser. As they get looser, my pants get more uncomfortable. And it just is not a great situation, to the point that I have stopped wearing that style of buckle really ever. Instead, you want to get an actual buckle with like belt holes in it, right? So put it through, pull it up, pick which hole you want. It might be tight, it might be loose, whatever is more comfortable for you, keeping in mind that you do want to keep that off of your hips so you can hike effectively and wade effectively. But that buckle that is securely fastened with the post that goes through the hole, and then you tuck that belt in back through that little holder on the belt. And you'll have to forgive me, I know nothing about belts from a professional standpoint, so I don't know what any of these things are officially called. Just a simple fisherman. But you really want to be able to use those for your fishing, and you don't want to do anything else. So make sure you've got a belt. Make sure it's not going to rip or break. It should be a reasonably durable belt. And make sure you have those on your pants. One extra bonus about that is that when you are fishing wherever you're going, let's say you take off your day pack and now you're ready to go fish with your smaller fishing pack, that belt can be used to hold your wading net, your fishing net. You can take it and you can just stuff it in the back, just between your pants and the belt itself, between a couple of the loops, and it'll just sit there right in the small of your back while you're off fishing. Again, if you have a belt that doesn't fit you right, or if it's going, slack or coming loose, it's probably not going to work. And in fact, hanging anything off of your belt is not going to work if you can't really securely fasten it. I use mine to hold my Fish Pond Canyon Creek chest bag, which also goes on your belt that has a loop. I put that on my hip. I put my net in my back or along my lower back. And then I go fish like that wherever I'm going, so I don't have to carry my pack at the lake. And that is the way that you want to do it when it comes to having a belt for these things. As far as underwear goes, you got to wear underwear. I know I shouldn't have to say that, but you do have to wear underwear. I occasionally meet people who say that they don't because they are, I don't know, like morally opposed to wearing underwear, or they prefer the freedom or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to get into that, and that's beyond the scope of this podcast. But you do need to wear underwear, and the type of underwear that you wear matters, right? So this is going to go a little bit TMI for you, so I apologize in advance. I wear specifically briefs, not boxer briefs, okay? Not boxers, but briefs, because they provide some additional support when you're hiking. and they kind of keep everything out of the way when you're like bending and crouching and waiting or climbing or scrambling. It's nice if you are a guy to have everything secured in there in a comfortable way. Buy yourself some really nice briefs. Don't get the cheapo, like whitey tighty ones that your grandpa was wearing back in the 1940s. Get yourself some pretty decent ones made out of a decent material that are actually comfortable to wear. And that's really what you ought to wear. I have tried boxer briefs. I have tried regular boxers. I don't find that they give me the support that I need. I also find, and this is kind of gross, so I'm sorry, when you've been hiking all day, you will develop a condition known scientifically as swamp ass, which is to say that your butt gets sweaty. And it's not very nice. It's unpleasant to feel. It doesn't smell great for other people. It happens to everybody. I'm sure people are going to deny it. It happens to you too. You just don't notice. And the more appropriate your undergarments are, the more that situation will be controlled. And you really want those kind of briefs for guys to keep that under control, give you the support that you need, and kind of leave your legs free to do what you need to do. One downside of boxer briefs, I'll just mention this, that drove me crazy, is that the section that kind of stretches down along your thighs, because they go further down your leg, sometimes rolls up, and you can get this sort of weird, like a roll or a wrinkle in there that is really uncomfortable, because when they roll like that, they don't stretch the way they're supposed to, and suddenly you go to take a big step on a rock, and it is like having somebody put a tourniquet on your leg, and it sucks. It's not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. That doesn't happen with briefs. Really strongly encourage you to go old school, wear briefs. If you're a female, I'm afraid that I can't help you a lot because I don't spend a ton of time wearing women's underwear. I can tell you out of hand, you probably don't want to wear a thong. Probably going to get pretty chafed and pretty gross and pretty uncomfortable. You're going to want to wear kind of the same thing, like those kind of brief style underwear that let your legs be free. They don't get bunched up around anything, and they kind of keep everything, where it needs to be. So I'm afraid I can't be super duper helpful on that front, but I would encourage you, not to wear spicy underwear out there, and to think carefully about what you wear as an undergarment so that you don't have a bad or potentially embarrassing time, whether you're a man or a woman. Okay, so that is legs. Let's talk about feet. This is kind of feet and legs, so I'll just throw that out there. This is a bit of a combo. But you want to wear wool socks that come up to about your mid-calf. You don't want to wear cotton socks. You don't want to wear polyester socks. You don't want to wear any other kind of sock other than wool. Wool is amazing stuff. It tends to insulate pretty well, even when it is wet. It is extremely comfortable. It's breathable by nature. Obviously, sheep walk around with it stuck to their bodies all the time. It's designed to be functional in the outdoors because that's how evolution designed it. And it's the best thing that you can put on your feet for hiking or for wet wading or for anything else. You need to have a pair of wool socks. They're expensive. They probably run like 20, 25, 30 bucks a pair. They are pricey if you get decent stuff. They are well worth it. You probably only need a few pairs. I always have one on my feet, and then I have an extra pair usually in my backpack just in case those get wet. But you want to wear wool socks on your feet, and you want those to come up to, about your mid-calf. You don't want the ankle cut ones because that's not going to be very comfortable in hiking boots. Your bare ankle skin will start rubbing on the sides of the boots. Or just, for a lot of reasons, you really don't want those low-cut socks. You want them to come all the way up, cover your leg all the way to the top of your boots at the very least, and probably then some for when you're hiking, because you're just going to be a lot happier. Your feet are going to be more regulated and less wet and less sweaty, and it's just going to be better for you. When it's cold outside, your feet will be warm. When it's warm outside, your feet are going to be cooler. Just wear wool. There's nothing better. You're not going to do it better than nature. Nobody's going to do it better than nature. Wool is the correct answer always and forever, and you should have it on your feet pretty much all the time. If you happen to be wading, so I should specify, when I hike up to a high alpine lake, I'm probably not going to wade. That water is super duper cold, and I'm usually wearing hiking boots, and I really, really, really don't want to get my hiking boots wet. They're not wading boots. They don't have those holes in them to drain the water out if they do get wet, and so it just kind of stays in there and sloshes around, and it is miserable. I went on a camping trip not too long ago where I didn't do a great job of pulling my boots all the way underneath the vestibule and the rain fly of the tent. I thought they were covered. They weren't. I woke up after a terrible rainstorm for a big hike the next day, and there was like an inch of standing water in my boots. And I didn't have a second pair of boots, obviously. I don't typically carry extra boots with me because they're heavy and cumbersome. So I had to put them on wet. And let me tell you, the feeling of putting your feet, which are dry and happy from a sleeping bag, into wet, cold boots, it is the worst thing in the world. I don't think I can think of anything worse than that. It's a 10 out of 10, awful. And then I hiked on them for about 12 hours after that. So by the time I got down, I looked like a World War I soldier experiencing trench foot. You probably could have put me in like a early 1900s, medical journal. It was really, really, really unpleasant. My feet looked like they were attached to a corpse. They were white and wrinkled and just awful. So I try not to get my boots wet. And you should try hard not to get your boots wet too. We'll talk more about, what kind of boots you should be wearing in a second. But I want to draw a distinction because if I'm at a lake, I'm probably not wading. If I am going to wade, I will probably bring a pair of sandals strapped to the outside of my pack. So some lakes, especially high alpine lakes, the fish, they'll have a real wide sort of shallow shelf on them. Often you'll see cutthroat cruising on that shelf, and it's a great place to catch them. But sometimes they like to hang sort of out on the edge where it drops off into deeper water because that gives the fish a chance to disappear if they see a predator overhead or they get spooked. It gives them access to that colder water, especially in the warmer months, depending on your elevation, where the fish really don't like being in that super warm, shallow water. So they'll come up in the shallows to eat and catch a couple bugs that are hatching, and then they'll disappear back into the colder stuff in the middle of the lake. And sometimes those shelves are really wide, which might require you to wade, or you're not going to be able to get out to that drop off where the fish are. Because fly rods inherently have at least some distance limitations as far as how we can cast. In those cases, I might wade, but I don't wade in my hiking boots. I wade in my sandals. I have a pair of Teva Hudson sandals. These are kind of like their regular ones. They're a little more rugged, I guess. They're kind of leather straps. There is a strap around the back of your foot and then across the top of your foot and then another one around your toes. So they're very secure. They actually have some tread on them. I wouldn't hike in them. I wouldn't wade in them. And in fact, we should mention that never wade in sandals, guys, especially in moving water. You're going to slip because they're not made for that. And you're either going to break your ankle, which might happen, or you're going to jam your toe up underneath a rock and rip off your toenail or break your toe, or at the very least hurt yourself so badly that you say a bunch of words that you probably shouldn't say. I've been that guy. I've tried this. It doesn't work very well. Don't wear sandals to wade in moving water. You can wear them to wade in a lake where you're not in really big danger of doing that stuff. And then when you're done, you take them off. You put them back on your pack. They dry out. You dry your feet out a little bit. You put your warm wool socks back on. You put on your dry boots and you head out. That's the right way to do that. But don't wade in your hiking boots, obviously. If you are going to be doing anything that looks like serious wading in a river, so let's say you're doing a backcountry day on a creek. I just did this last week. Found a creek, hopped off the trail, I went down to it, and I fished that thing from basically where I got in for 3 miles, and then I bushwhacked my way back to the trail and went home. For those days, I probably will wear wading boots. And that is, I don't like to hike in wading boots. I have hiked in wading boots. I've hiked very long distances in wading boots. We're talking like 8 to 10 miles. They're just not made for it. Your foot moves around quite a bit in it. They just don't do the same thing as hiking boots. And even the best quality wading boots it's just not what they're made for. Honestly, it's not an appropriate use for them. It's not very comfortable. Your feet are going to hurt. You're probably going to get blisters, and it's just not going to be a great time. So don't hike in them if you're going somewhere. But if you are going to hop into a stream, maybe you only need to walk a mile to get there. you're going to jump in the water and fish, then yeah, you might want to wear wading boots. And when I do that, I wear a pair of neoprene wading socks underneath the boots. So you probably know this. Wading boots are typically larger than your normal shoe. So if you get a size 10 wading boot, it's probably a little bit bigger than like a size 10 hiking boot because it has to accommodate the stocking feet, the neoprene stocking feet in a wader. And as a result, they don't fit great if you just have like a regular old sock on. They slide around a lot. They're going to be too big. They just don't fit wonderfully. If you put on a pair of neoprene wading socks, these are like $30. Orvis makes them. Patagonia makes them. There are a whole Reddington makes them. There are a whole bunch of different kinds. I think they're probably all exactly the same, but they're fairly thin neoprene, kind of medium thickness. Let's say, 2 millimeters, probably most of them. You put those on over your wool socks, and we'll talk more about that here in just a second. But you put those over your wool socks, and then you put your feet down in the wading boots, and now it's basically the same as if you had a stocking foot from a wader in there. It fills out the boot, but you don't obviously have waders on. You're still wet wading. They come with 2 added benefits. So number one is they'll keep your feet a little warmer. That neoprene is thicker. It's pretty good at insulating, almost like a wetsuit. Once you get water in there, your body will actually start to insulate the water around your foot. And those socks actually make a pretty big difference. So if you wade the same section of stream with a pair of sandals where you're kind of barefoot, or with just regular socks and regular tennis shoes versus when you do it with a pair of neoprene socks, you're going to be noticeably warmer and more comfortable with those neoprene socks than you would be otherwise. You can roll those things down. They usually come with a hook, so you can hook them to your boot as sort of a gravel guard, to keep like rocks and pebbles out of your boots. That's fine, and you can do it that way. I tend to keep them rolled all the way up to like the top of my calf. They're pretty long because I find that they insulate my legs a little bit better. So that same warmth thing, when I'm in cold water, they really help my legs stay warm, and the warmer your legs are, the warmer your feet are. And also because they provide some protection. So some of the worst pain I've ever had fishing is like banging my shin against a rock, bare skin, or like ripping it across a jagged log or something while I'm wading. Doesn't feel very good. And if you put those neoprene socks all the way up, you roll them all the way up, they provide some cushion. Now you have like a couple millimeters of this sort of foamy cushion that takes a lot of the impact out if you were to bang it on a sharp rock. It stops you from getting cut. It keeps you a little warmer. I know it's not really the way you're supposed to wear them, but that is the way I wear them. I wear them kind of rolled up to the top of my calf underneath my pants. And I'm a pretty happy camper. I don't think anybody's going to talk me out of doing that. Yeah, I get a rock or two in my boot every now and then. It happens. Stop, take your boots off, dump the rocks out, put them back on. It takes 2 minutes. It's pretty much the same thing you do when you hike. I don't know if the gravel guard would stop that from happening, but whatever. Just take the rocks out. One thing to note, I wear the wool socks underneath the wading socks, okay? You don't want to put wading socks on your bare feet. They're really, really hard to get on. Neoprene's kind of sticky, especially on kind of sweaty skin. And they're really hard to take off. So when your feet are wet at the end of the day, trying to peel those things off is exhausting. And I've almost like popped my knee out of joint trying to pull those things off at the end of the day when they were on bare skin. At some point, somebody clued me into the fact you will have a much better time if you wear wool socks underneath your neoprene wading socks, because it just makes it so much easier to put the neoprenes on. Now they just slide right on, they slide right off. And you're just going to be much more comfortable on top of having those extra insulating properties from the wool and giving your skin a bit of a barrier with soft fabric from that neoprene. The wool socks do get wet. I have people ask me this all the time. Well, don't the socks get wet? Yeah, they do. That's why it's called wet wading. Pretty much everything that's in the water is going to get wet, but you're not going to notice. So the socks will get soaked. You're not even going to notice that you're wearing them. You won't feel a difference, but they will keep your feet warmer. And then at the end of the day, you will actually be able to take off your wet wading socks. You peel them off. You peel off the wool socks underneath them. Life is good. You put on your sandals and you drive home and let your feet dry out. Which, by the way, taking off your boots and putting on your sandals at the end of the day when that air first hits your feet, especially if it's been a long day. Oh man, it is the best feeling in the world. So wet wading socks, if you're going to be wading, those are important, and put them over your wool socks when you put them on. Okay, let's talk about boots. If you're wading, sticking with that same concept, I've done a lot of different wading boots. I had a pair of Sims Freestones for a lot of years. They're fine. They're kind of clunky and heavy, but they are pretty durable and they do okay. I have more recently switched to a new brand, switching over to the Orvis side this time, and I bought myself a pair of the Orvis Pro LTs. This is the new lightweight wading boot from Orvis. They're, I don't know, I haven't weighed them, but they're considerably lighter than the Sims boots were. They're super duper quick to lace up and to put on, and they are pretty comfortable to walk in. Again, I wouldn't want to hike 15 miles to a lake in them, but if I'm going to just walk a mile or 2 miles down to a stream and then hop in and I'm going to be in the river pretty much all day, these are the boots that I wear, and they're pretty good. They don't have the fancy BOA system. I really hate those BOA systems. I think that they're awful. They break and then you're screwed because there's really nothing you can do. They have to be repaired a certain way. I find it difficult to get the right amount of tension on them. It's like you tighten them up and then 10 minutes later they don't feel tight enough, and then it feels too tight. They just aren't, they're not my favorite. So stay away from the BOA stuff. I prefer the regular lacing. I know we live in a world where we're always trying to make everything easier all the time. Just lace up and tie your boots like a normal human. You're going to be happier about it, and they're going to do better for you. The boots that I wear have just plain old rubber soles. There are some guys who really like the Corker style boots with the different soles that you can swap in and out. I guess if you're into that, you can. I've had a couple pairs of Corkers. To be honest with you, I haven't cared for them. We can talk more about that specifically in a future episode. But that's not my thing. I just want rubber soles. I don't usually bother putting in those grip studs or anything like that because I'm typically not fishing rivers where they're helpful. I'm fishing rivers that have granite bottoms, and those studs don't bite into anything. They just make you feel like you're ice skating. So just plain old rubber soles. Don't wear felt. In addition to being illegal in a lot of places, it's really, really, really bad for the environment because it holds potentially contaminants from one stream to another that you could pass along. And it's completely useless in the snow. If you try to wear felt ever in the snow, it's going to get stuck, it's going to freeze, and you're going to slip and slide around and look like a fool. On top of maybe hurting yourself, which in the backcountry is a big deal. So plain old rubber soles. You can buy whatever kind of wading boots you want. I recommend that you try to find light ones, even if you have to pay a little bit extra for them. It does make a difference to have comfortable, lightweight wading boots when you're out there, especially for a long day in a backcountry creek. For hiking boots, same thing. Dealer's choice. You decide what you want. Do get a really high quality pair of hiking boots. You want boots that come up over your ankles. And that's true for wading boots too, by the way. There are a few low ones. I wouldn't do that. Get boots for both wading boots and hiking boots that come all the way up your ankles, because they're going to stop you from rolling your ankle. Sooner or later, you're going to step wrong. You're going to roll your ankle. Those boots will be the difference between a ouch, that hurt, and a oh crap, I broke my ankle and now I got to hit the SOS button on my Garmin over here. Get the high ankled ones. I'm wearing currently a pair of Salomon Quest 4 hiking boots. That's what I've been using this summer. They're very comfortable. They're fully waterproof. You do want waterproof hiking boots. You're going to be guaranteed walking in mud, walking in marshes, crossing streams. It's just going to happen when you go to these places. It's part of being in the backcountry. You are absolutely going to get your feet wet. You 100,000% need waterproof boots. You need them. You got to have them. It's not negotiable. I don't care if it's expensive. You got to have waterproof boots or you're just not going to have a very good time. Get the Gore-Tex kind that are nice and breathable so they can stay cool when you need them to stay cool and be warmer for you when you need them to be warmer. But good waterproof boots. The Quest 4s are what I have now. I like them. I don't know how well they're going to hold up. I've already got some damage on them. But then again, I also hike a lot, and I'm not very nice to them. So I don't really know if that's fair. I typically have to replace hiking boots at least every other season. These look like they might have to be replaced by next season. So, whatever. Solomon, Danner, Merrill. I mean, there are a million brands of these. They all make good stuff. You decide what fits you best, but get some good hiking boots. It's probably the most important thing that you're wearing on those long hikes. If your feet are miserable, everything. It's just going to be terrible. Even if everything else is right, it's just going to be awful, and you're not going to have a lot of fun with it. All right, so that covers clothing. That's the stuff that I have on that falls in the clothing category. Real quick, I want to give you a rundown of some of the other accessories, we'll call them, that I might have on me or I do have on me on any given backcountry trip, whether it's a day trip or a backpacking trip or anything else. First things first, I'm always wearing sunglasses. You need to have polarized sunglasses. If you fly fish at all, you already know this. The polarization helps cut through the glare on the water. It lets you see where the fish are. Being able to see where the fish are is obviously going to make you more productive. That is especially true on high alpine lakes where they're huge and you need to kind of walk the shoreline looking for those cruising cutthroats. You need to have polarized glasses. I have a pair of Natives. They are amber polarized lenses. Depending on where you fish, you might want different kinds and different colors of lenses. Amber tends to be the best lens for Colorado just because of the color of our water out here. But I always have them with me no matter what. And I have them on all the time because they protect my eyes. They make it easier for me to see. And they're just super easy. Those sunglasses hang on a pair of croquis around my neck so I don't lose them. Yeah, I know croquis aren't cool and haven't been cool for a long time. But I don't really care. I've dropped enough pairs of sunglasses in the river to know that I got to be able to keep them on my neck. And if I look like a dorky old dad who fly fishes, that's cool because I am a dorky old dad who fly fishes, so no problem there. Sunglasses, croquis, or some type of retention device so that you're not losing those things in the water when you bend over. You're going to want to have those. I wear a fitness tracker. I've mentioned this before. Mine is a Garmin Fenix 7. It's got a whole bunch of navigation and mapping features on it that I love, including the ability to pull up topographic maps right on the watch. It's a little pricey. You don't necessarily need that, but you do want a fitness tracker, in part because it's a cool way to keep track of what you're doing and show off to your friends, but also because it shows you your progress, right? It can tell you your average hiking speed. It tells you what elevation you're at. It tells you what type of ascent you've done, so how many vertical feet you've done over the course of the day. It can give you a sense of how long it's going to take to do something. So, for instance, I often time myself going from a lower lake to an upper lake to see how long it's going to take. So I know roughly how long it'll take me to get back down in case the weather blows in. And that kind of gives me a sense of how quickly I need to skedaddle if things get spicy up there. And then it's just kind of cool to keep for fitness purposes, right? So we'll talk about fitness in a future episode, but this backcountry fly fishing thing, you're wading, you're hiking, you're bouldering, you're scrambling, you're kneeling, there's tons of stuff going on. And it is pretty intimately wrapped up with your physical fitness. Having a way to gauge and measure your physical fitness is huge. It lets you know where you are. It lets you know where your weaknesses are. It can give you a sense of kind of how you're feeling any given day and how you're recovering. I think it's well worth it. So whether you get a Fitbit or a Suunto or a Garmin or whatever, it doesn't matter. There are a lot of really good brands and good products out there. Do bring it with you. I think you're going to be happy that you had it, just as a convenience factor. And when you get into doing real serious backcountry stuff and off-trail stuff, those navigational aids can also be really, really helpful from a safety perspective. So I almost always have that on. And then I also sometimes wear earbuds. So I don't recommend that you cover your ears in the wild. You don't want to take away your sense of hearing. It is one of the most important senses that you have. It is also probably the first sense that you're going to have alert you to something bad happening. A rock slide or thunder in the distance or a grizzly bear charging you or whatever. Your ears are really important. Don't take those away from yourself. So don't wear over the ear noise canceling headphones. It's a bad idea on top of being gross and sweaty. Probably don't wear AirPods. So anything that actually goes in your ear canal and blocks it out, probably not the right thing to wear. But I do wear something called Shocks, and there are other brands. This is just the one that I happen to have. And they're like open ear design. So there's one pair that actually sits kind of tightly against the bones in your temple right next to your ear. It transmits sound directly to the bone so that your ears are completely open. You can still hear. And I have another pair that's a pair of earbuds that sit on my ears, and they sort of, well, I don't know exactly how they work, but they keep your ears open so that you can listen to music at a low volume, right? You don't want to crank this stuff up to 1,000%. But at a low volume, you can still listen to music. It helps a lot when you're hiking and keeping yourself motivated, especially on those long days. But it doesn't block your hearing, so you can still hear what's going on around you, which is very, very important for safety when you're in the backcountry. So nothing wrong with wearing earbuds. If you just want to listen to nature soundtrack, that's cool. I usually turn mine off when I actually start fishing because I like to just listen and be there. But when you're hiking long distances and you just need that little bit of motivation or a little bit of company, if you're solo hiking or whatever, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having some music or a podcast or an audiobook. Just make sure that what you have on your ears is appropriate and does not take away that sense of hearing, because that really is important to you out there. And then the very last couple things, I do carry a satchel. I talked about my backpack last time around. Quick note, I bought myself a new backpack on sale. It is a Gregory Zulu 30. I took it on this big hike yesterday, and I loved it. It was so comfortable. The Firehole might have some serious competition here. We'll do a full thing on backpacks at some point, but man, I was happy with that thing. In addition to that, I wear a satchel. You can call it a man purse or a merce or whatever, and you can make fun of me for it. I've already accepted the fact that I'm a dorky old dad, like I said, so I don't care. But I wear it on my front. So the backpack's in the back. I wear the satchel in the front. It usually has my Garmin sort of GPS device in it. It has a knife in it. It has some extra sunscreen in it that I might need. And depending on where I am, it may have some type of protection in it. So bear spray or a firearm or something like that, where it is up front and I can get to it quickly. You don't want to put that stuff in your backpack because it's annoying to have to stop and get it out. And when it comes to safety items, you might not have time to stop and take it out. So I like to carry that thing on my front. It's a game changer. You can put your wallet and your keys in there. Don't leave it behind, so be careful about it. But I do usually have a satchel on me because it just makes things more convenient for me. Take a look. I think if you can get past the initial hump of, man, that's not cool, you'll find that you like it. Then it can be kind of a game changer for you. And then the last couple things are not any of those items. They're just regular stuff. Wear sunscreen, right? We talked about this earlier. I always have on sunscreen. I'm always carrying extra sunscreen. You can use the natural mineral-based zinc oxide stuff that just kind of reflects the sun. You can use the old school chemical stuff that does it differently. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Wear sunscreen, whether it's SPF 30 or 50, just put some on, okay? Because skin cancer is a real thing. You don't want to be in the sun all the time. And even if you don't get skin cancer, you don't want to be that guy who, looks like a mummy from one of those Egyptian documentaries. Just put on sunscreen. I'm always wearing that. It's worth you wearing it too. Stick, tube, spray, whatever you want. Doesn't matter, but do keep it with you and wear it. And then bug spray. A lot of these places are full of bugs. The bugs like to eat you. It sucks. It's very uncomfortable. You can use DEET bug spray. I find that still works pretty well in a lot of places, but it's DEET, which is terrible for you. Or you can get the more natural stuff with citronella or whatever that is. But you do want to wear bug spray. Don't just put it on exposed skin. Spray that stuff over your clothing as well. Remember to reapply it because after a couple hours, the bugs just penetrate your defenses and get to you anyway. But I'm always wearing bug spray and sunscreen on top of everything else that I've got with me. And that's pretty much it. That's what I have with me on any given day in the backcountry, and it's what I'm wearing any given day in the backcountry. It doesn't change a lot, right? I mean, like I said, this gear really will get you through the fall. You might have a couple of additions, like maybe you have a pair of wool gloves in your backpack if you think it's going to be a cold day and you're pretty deep in the fall. But for the most part, this setup is going to do really well for you kind of right up through the beginning of winter. So I'd say October-ish, so like mid-October, you're going to be fine with this thing and you don't have to change it a lot. So before you go, you can lay it all out. It's ready to go. You know exactly what you're wearing. You know what you want. Everything you need is in your backpack. And you're good for those kind of 6 months of the year. And then once we get into winter and spring, that's different. We'll talk about that on a different episode. But this is your get up. So when you're playing, outdoorsman Barbie dress up, this is what it should probably look like. And it's definitely what mine looks like. So hopefully that's helpful to you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Sorry to spend an hour talking about clothing, but honestly, it's one of those really important pieces of the backcountry and being outside and fly fishing in general that just doesn't get talked about very often. People just don't, they skip this part. And that's a shame because if you're not dressed right, you're probably not going to have as good of a time as you would if you were properly dressed and properly equipped. So I hope you enjoyed it, and be safe out there. Until next time, this is Ross. Maybe I'll see you out there, but hopefully not.